Hey, what's up everybody? This is Jhow here. I'm a bass player and MD from the LA area. I'm looking forward to talking with the drum gurus at 8 p.m. Nigeria time, 12 noon LA time. Gonna be talking about music, MDing, whatever they want. So join us then. It's gonna be a blast. So I think if I had to give some just like supreme advice to anybody, since there's like, seems like a pretty diverse group of musicians, and it seems like it's probably a large age range too. I would say this. I read this interview once, and it was this bass player who at the time was a big influence on me. His name was Mike Pope, and he played with Chick Corea and Jeffrey Keezer and like those kinds of musicians. And so I was reading an interview about him once, and there was a really typical question. They asked him like, what advice would you give young bass players, specifically bass players at the time? And he said something really, I thought that was really profound. He said, no matter what you're doing, whether you're practicing a lot or whether you're performing a lot or whatever, he said, just start practicing and doing the kinds of gigs and the kind of work that you want to do sooner rather than later, right? I think a lot of people get really hung up on like having to practice a lot and learning the skills. Like they want to be very prepared and they want to like learn the whole skill set for something before they do it. You know what I mean? They want to learn how to solo, like if it's jazz, they want to learn how to solo, and they want to learn all the artists, and they want to learn all the songs and everything, so they want to be like extremely prepared, which I appreciate, but I think you do so much learning just getting in there and really engaging with the art form. And he said, took it one step further, and he said, the outcome is always the same. You know what I mean? Whether you practice your scales, whether you practice reading, whether you practice, you like learn intensely, everything, or whether you're practicing just the stuff you want, or whether you're practicing nothing you like, and it's just fundamentals or whatever. He said the outcome is always the same. The outcome is you remember what you like and what you relate to, and you forget what you don't like. And so he was saying, sooner rather than later, start learning what you want now. You know what I mean? Start practicing what you want now. Start playing the music that you want to be playing now. Don't wait around for somebody to ask you to do it. Start learning that now because no matter what, the outcome is always going to be the same. I think groups like this are really amazing because I think that if I didn't have a community as a musician, I think that I would be a lot worse, and I would be not as far along as I am now. Having people around you that are enthusiastic, just in general about music, I think is extremely healthy. And it's the same thing with everything else. I think that if you are a person who loves sports, if you're a person who loves welding, you know what I mean? Like anything, any skill that you could honestly just study for the rest of your life, I think it's so valuable to have a community. So I think everybody in this community is doing the right thing by being in touch with each other, by just being here at all. And so one thing I would encourage everybody to do also is this is something that I tell a lot of my students. And I heard this from somebody that I was taking lessons from when I was young, when I was like in high school. He told me, he said, however many hours that you practice in your own room by yourself, you know what I mean? So if you practice 3 hours by yourself a week, you should put that much time into playing with other people. Most of music is like a communal experience, and you learn so much by playing with other people. You learn a lot by taking lessons, and you learn a lot by practicing by yourself and things like that too. But I mean, it's just like talking, you know what I mean? If you were just like, okay, I'm gonna speak better. I'm gonna learn how to speak. Maybe it's English, maybe it's Portuguese, maybe it's a different language. If you were like, I'm gonna learn how to speak this language better, and you just sat in your room all the time, and were like, talking to yourself, practicing like vernacular and verbiage and things like that, you would get pretty far. You know what I mean? You would probably learn a lot of words. You would probably learn and understand a lot about the language, but as far as being able to communicate with other people and conversate, you wouldn't learn you wouldn't learn nearly as much. And the right way to do that is to get out and to have those conversations with real people who have their own opinions and their own thoughts. I think music is the same way. I think that if you get out of your house, get out of your practice room, get out of your own church, get out of like your own band, get out of your own gig that you normally do, and you go out and you meet more musicians, meet more producers, more people who have opinions about music, more people who have, informed, whether it's well-informed or ill-informed, informed, opinions and thoughts about music, you're going to learn so much more because you're going to come in contact with people that you disagree with, and you're going to go, oh, I hadn't thought about that before. I don't agree with that. That's not a part of music that I vibe with, and I don't think that's right. And that's an extremely valuable thing to understand about your own artistry and your own opinions. But then also you're going to learn and you're going to find people who you do agree with, and they're going to have taken your ideas and your thoughts one step further already, and so that's a little shortcut. You know what I mean? You're saving yourself time, and you're being more efficient with your practicing and with your just with your musical journey by getting out and meeting more people, playing with more people, going to people's gigs, going to see live music. I had a friend in high school who eventually, we knew each other into college age too. He told me once, he said, there's a difference between musicians who go and see live music and musicians who don't. And that's so true. People who don't go out and see live music but then are musicians, they just miss something completely. I think that's one reason why church ends up being a really good thing for most musicians is they're seeing live music every single week, whether they're attending or whether they're whatever. Same with jam sessions. People who go to jam sessions every week, I think they understand something about music that people who don't do that, that they will like completely miss. And so I think community, I think getting out and giving yourself more experience, even if it's with genres and situations that you're just not even a little familiar with, I think that's so valuable. And then the part two of that is then actively forming an opinion about it, whether it's positive or negative or something like that. I think that's going to be that's like just super invaluable. Okay, here we go. Questions. How have you been able to come up with your own sound? So my sound, let's see. So my earliest musical influences was like oldies, like American popular music oldies. So like, that's like Temptations, The Tops, The Supremes, Jackson 5, Marvin Gaye, Michael Jackson, of course, things like that. So that sound was a lot of this bass player named James Jamerson. And so I would say definitely check him out if you're a bass player, just any musician in general, check him out because he's such an incredible bass player. And then also another one of my really early influences was Jaco Pastorius. That was like the beginning of my sound was those two bass players. And then as I got older and as I was studying more jazz, I was listening to jazz bass players. John Patitucci, Mike Pope were big like electric players, but also I was listening to Lindley Marth, Hadrian Farad, Yannick Wazdala, and then also, like kind of the classics like Ray Brown, Paul Chambers, Ron Carter was a huge influence on me, Rufus Reed. And then on the church side of things, I was also listening to Justin Raines, Robert Bubby Lewis, who I'm a huge fan of, and Terrence Palmer, who was like Israel Houghton's like early bass player. Also a bass player that's a huge influence on me is Thaddeus Tribbett, who played with Ty Tribbett and Justin Timberlake and a lot of other people. So that was kind of like the next phase of my sound, was all those people. And then I lived in Nashville for a while. Sorry, not a long time. And I was playing in Nashville and playing in Atlanta a lot. And so when I was there, I decided that I would really kind of like give myself to that sound. And so I was I was listening to a lot of bass players in Nashville specifically, and just trying to sound like them and do what they were doing, just so I could understand it, even if I didn't really like it that much at the time. I grew to really, really appreciate it, and I really like it now. But so then that was another part of my sound, and then lately I've been kind of on my own journey as far as my own sound, my own tones, things like that. And I've really been trying to like synthesize all of my like top bass players. I've been trying to like synthesize their sounds and their approaches into my own. So those bass players are Thaddeus Tribbett, Robert Bubby Lewis for sure. Pino Palladino is another huge influence on me. I think James Jamerson, obviously, somebody I always go back to. He's so incredible. Let's see. Paul Jackson. I think Paul Jackson is a bass player who I have been like heavily influenced by, but I've never gone and like really learned everything he did. So he played with Herbie Hancock and he played with the Headhunters. Yeah, like it's just, I think the way that he approaches the instrument and the way that I approach the instrument are very similar. I think we have a lot of the same attitudes, even though since understanding him more, I've gone and like listened to his interviews and things like that. So I know that for sure now, but that was my hunch at the beginning too. And then currently I'm also influenced by a lot of the bass players that I get to see in Los Angeles, which is a reason that being in a place with a lot of musicians is really great. There's a really incredible bass player named Matty Taylor. His Instagram is at Billy Disco, but it's spelled with a K. He's really amazing. I think that there's a bass player who I just met who is younger, but I really like him. His name is Taku. And then all the other bass players around here, Ginu Kenji, Hadrian Fraud, obviously. There's so many like good bass players here. Zephyr. I'm drawing a blank, but there's a lot of really incredible bass players here that I really like. So as far as my own sound goes, that's kind of like the timeline of it. Okay, as far as my experience with other musicians, I don't think I understand the question. If you're asking me like just who have I played for and things like that, I will send a big list of musicians that I've played for and had the privilege to kind of like share the stage with and things like that. If you're asking about like what do I get from playing with other musicians, I think that playing with other musicians is my favorite part of music. In fact, anytime I'm on gigs where I am basically not playing with other musicians, so maybe I'm just like supposed to do something, I'm just supposed to like do one thing and I don't get to interact with other musicians much, then I immediately enjoy that experience way I enjoy it way less. And so I think that when I was younger, I was extremely concerned about like being great and being the best and things like that. And then now and also I was concerned with like playing with other musicians who are just like the best, so I was just so concerned with like trying to be with the best musicians all the time in every city I was in. And I was largely successful at that. But now it's more like I'm really concerned about playing with musicians who have something really sincere and serious to offer, because I've at every single level, from like beginner to the most advanced, you're always going to come in contact with people who are really only concerned with like regurgitating what they have been told and what they know, as opposed to like having a real interaction with other musicians and really offering something to the musical situation. So it's funny, I was actually talking about skill and talent with somebody just the other day. So it's funny that somebody would ask a question about that. So here's what I think. I think that talent matters I think talent makes the biggest difference in the very beginning of somebody's musical journey, and then when you get like, so if that's like steps 1 and 2, 1, 2, and 3, And then step like 3 to like 8, I think talent matters a lot less, and it's really mostly about hard work. I think talent still matters, and it like helps you work hard in different places, but that's the part where you're like, you get into like the minutia of whatever your instrument is, whatever music, whatever like style and genre you're a part of. Like, you're learning like the depth of that music from like levels 3 to 8. Then once you're all the way through that, which takes a long time for everybody, once you're all the way through that, and in that whole like span is like, that's like the 10,000 hours that somebody would put in, and all, that whole thing. After level 8, I think talent kicks back in a really huge way. Now, level 8 to me is going to be like most professional musicians that you think and that I think are amazing, right? So like, you get really good through like a lot of hard work, a little bit of talent, a decent amount of talent in the beginning, and then a lot of hard work. And then after that, after all the hard work and after you're like professional level already, I think talent kicks back in a different way, and really helps somebody find what they're incredible at, and helps them like kind of like maximize their own skills and things like that. And let me tell you, that's the thing that really separates people who are absolutely incredible to people who are like just normal good. The people who are absolutely incredible have figured out how to maximize the skills that they have that are like extremely high, right? So like, maybe they're not a good reader, or maybe they're not the best writer, but their ears are amazing and their memory is really good, and they have like really good chops or something like that. And so then what you would do to maximize your skills is you would memorize a billion songs. You would learn as many sounds as you can, so whenever you hear something, you could recognize it immediately. And then like, you would learn how to, and if you're with your good chops, you would like learn how to do all those things that you're hearing. So that's what I mean. Or if somebody's like, for example, if somebody's like a really amazing writer, or if they have a really great bird's eye view of music in general, then you would just be like, I'm going to be a producer, I'm going to be a writer. Maybe I don't play live as much, but in those spaces I can like really maximize, what I'm good at, and I'm constantly a part of that, rather than just trying to be like an all-around musician. That's the other thing. I think once you get past like the levels 3 through 8, once you get past all the hard work, I think most people stop trying to be so diverse, because it's a waste of time, and you have to accept in music that like, practicing this over here doesn't make me good at this over here. There's like a general music skill set that you can practice for a while, but pretty soon, once you get to like level 4, level 5, you have to pick a lane, and you have to decide, this is what I'm going to practice and this is what I want to become good at. And as far as the gear that I use, right now, I'm using this bass a lot. This bass, this is a Fender Mustang, and kind of like parts bass. The body is like an old Mustang body, and then this neck I think is like a Telecaster neck, or a bass Telecaster neck. I'm not sure actually what the neck is. I need to go back and check. But somebody redid this. I was looking for one of these basses. I was going to redo it myself, but then I found somebody online selling one of these for about $400. This bass has been really great. The other bass that I use is this bass over here. This is a company called Serek, S-E-R-E-K. They're in Chicago. I met them at NAMM, at the NAMM show, which is like a big kind of like music gear showcase thing. They were super cool, and they built this for me custom, and so I really love this bass. It sounds great. I think it looks great, things like that. That's what I'm using. As far as amps go, I'm using Form Factor amps right now. Other good amps, though, are like GK, Acoustic. I think Mark Bass is really good, even though they're kind of an unfortunate company to work with. I think that the amps that are you can find good, like you can find these amps and they're good, but you have to really look, are like the Fender amps and the Ampeg amps, kind of like the bigger brand amp companies. You have to really look for good amps like that. Carvin, I really like that brand. I used to play those amps a really long time ago. So that's what I'm using. As far as pedals go right now, I have this right here. So here's the pedals that I'm using the most right now. This Electro-Harmonix Pog and this Boss OC3, they're both octave pedals. For bass players, octave pedals are like distortion pedals for a guitar. Most bass players have like 2 or 3 of them. They sound different and they make your sound bigger and stand out more. You can take up more space. Then this Trident right here, this Seafoam, this company is called Seafoam. A friend of mine just turned me on to them. This is a distortion pedal, and this is a pedal that I really love called the Fairfield Circuitry Shallow Water. It's kind of like a chorus or a flanger, but it's like random, and it kind of makes it sound like you're underwater and things like that. So that's the gear that I'm using mostly. Okay, somebody asked, as a professional bass player, what are the specifications you look out for in bass brands? So for me, this is the advice that I always give. There's 2 things. The first thing is like, okay, we're in an age now where you can buy amazing cheap basses, like from like $150, $200 to like $400 or $500 range. You can find really, really good gear. Then after that, like $600 to like $1,200 range, it is largely the same. Most of the time you can find stuff that will be just like, exceptional in that price range, but most of what you find is going to be like, you're not going to get a ton more for your money if you're spending $800 as opposed to like $500 or something like that. So for me, as far as brands, any like large brand, what you can do is if you walk into a shop or if you order something offline or buy something from a person, if it has good reviews online, it's going to be at least okay. You know what I mean? The best thing to do is go to a place where you're able to try out basses, because really what's going to show you what a good bass is going to be like your hands on the instrument and you can hear it in person. So that's what I would really say, as opposed to brands, because all the brands are like good, right? Like Ibanez, Soundgear, Fender, Music Man, Schecter, Spectre, like all of those brands are going to be good. Gibson, they have really good stuff too. All of those brands are going to be good. And then all of the knockoff brands of those brands, you're going to be able to find good stuff in the knockoff brands too. So once you hit like the $1,200 mark, after that, in like $1,300 to like $3,000 or $4,000, which is a lot of money for an instrument, then you're going to start seeing like large improvements, and it's going to make a big difference. And then that whole spectrum, you have like, MTD, MTD, the brand that I use, which is called Seric. That's where you get into like a lot of other brands that are really incredible. But the cool thing is those like really kind of nice like boutique brands, they have like lower models now, which is really great. So that's what I mean when I say there's a really great market for like cheaper instruments right now. It may not stay that way for long, so if you find a good cheap instrument, definitely like snatch it up. Thanks to Drum Gurus for having me. I really appreciate all the questions. Don't be afraid to reach out to me at any time on Instagram or WhatsApp. On Instagram, I am at Jhow275. Hit me up with any questions. I also give lessons. I have a book on bass chords and also a video beginner bass course, all for sale. If you're interested in any of that, hit me up on Instagram, or you can hit me up on WhatsApp too. Just gonna play for a second. Thank you guys.